Clara Whitmore pressed her bleeding hands into the frozen earth and dragged herself toward her unconscious son. The wagon lay shattered behind her. The horse was gone. And somewhere in that Wyoming blizzard, the men who murdered her husband were still hunting her. She had nothing left. No home, no money, no hope. But she had a boy who needed his mother to stand up one more time. If you want to see how one woman turned her darkest moment into something beautiful, subscribe now and stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Wyoming Territory, November 1879. Clara's fingers wouldn't stop shaking. She tried to grip the reins tighter, but her hands had gone numb 3 miles back. The leather slipped through her palms like water. Beside her, Tommy pressed against her arm, his small body trembling beneath the threadbare blanket. "Mama," he whispered, "I can't feel my feet no more." "Wiggle your toes, baby." Clara kept her eyes fixed on the white emptiness ahead. "Keep wiggling them. Don't you stop." "I'm trying." "Try harder." The words came out sharper than she meant. She softened her voice. "We're gonna find shelter soon. I promise you that." Tommy didn't answer. He just pressed closer, and Clara felt his faith in her like a weight on her chest. A weight she wasn't sure she could carry much longer. 18 months. That's how long it had been since Daniel died. 18 months of running, hiding, scraping together enough pennies to keep moving west. 18 months of looking over her shoulder, waiting for Clayton Mercer's men to find her. And now, in the middle of a Wyoming blizzard, she was starting to think they wouldn't need to. The cold would finish what they started. "Mama, look!" Tommy pointed through the swirling snow. Clara squinted, her eyes burning from the wind. At first, she saw nothing. Then slowly a shape emerged from the white. Dark against the gray sky. Angular. Solid. A house. "Oh, thank God." The words came out as a breath barely audible. "Thank God." She snapped the reins, urging the exhausted horse forward. The animal stumbled, but kept moving, steam rising from its nostrils in thick clouds. They were 50 yards from the house when the wheel cracked. The sound cut through the howling wind like a gunshot. Clara felt the wagon lurch sideways, felt Tommy grab her arm, felt the world tilt beneath them. "Hold on." She yanked the reins, but it was too late. The wagon pitched into a drift, throwing them both into the snow. Clara hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. For a moment, everything went white. Then she heard Tommy crying. She was on her feet before she knew she'd moved. "Tommy, Tommy, where are you?" "Mama." She found him half buried in a drift, his face red from cold tears freezing on his cheeks. She pulled him up, checked his arms, his legs, his head. "Are you hurt? Tell me where it hurts." "I'm okay, Mama. I'm okay." But he wasn't. She could see it in his eyes, the fear that had lived there since the night they fled Missouri. The fear that never quite went away. "Can you walk?" He nodded. "Then we walk." Clara grabbed the saddlebag from the wreckage, slung it over her shoulder, and took Tommy's hand. "That house is gonna save us, baby. We just gotta get there." The snow reached her knees. Each step felt like dragging her legs through molasses. Tommy stumbled beside her, and she hauled him up every time, refusing to let him fall. 20 yards. 10. 5. The porch steps were buried in drifts, but she found them by feel, kicking through the snow until her boot hit wood. She climbed, pulling Tommy behind her. The door was stuck. She threw her shoulder against it once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th try, it gave way with a groan, and they tumbled inside. Darkness. Cold. The smell of dust and old wood. But no wind. No snow driving into her face. Clara slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Tommy collapsed beside her, his small body shaking. "We made it, Mama. We made it." She said it like a prayer, like if she said it enough times, she might believe it. The house was dead. That was Clara's first thought when her eyes adjusted to the darkness. The place had been beautiful once she could tell. 2 stories, wide windows, a stone fireplace that took up half the far wall. But years of neglect had stolen its warmth. Dust covered everything. The furniture sat beneath white sheets like ghosts waiting to wake. And the cold. Lord, the cold. It pressed against her from every direction, seeping through her wet clothes, burrowing into her bones. "Mama, I'm so cold." "I know, baby. I know." Clara forced herself to stand. "We need fire. Help me find something to burn." They searched by feel in the darkness. Clara found a chair with a broken leg. Tommy discovered a stack of old newspapers beneath a sheet. They piled everything in the fireplace. Clara reached into her pocket for her matches. 3 left. She'd been carrying them since Missouri, rationing them like gold, because out here fire meant life. She struck the first match. It flickered once and died. "No." The word came out strangled. "No, no, no!" She struck the second match. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. The flame caught the edge of the newspaper. Clara held her breath, watching it spread to the kindling, then to the broken chair leg. Fire. Heat. Life. Tommy pressed close to the flames, his face transformed by the orange glow. "It's working, Mama." Clara pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. "It's working." They sat there for a long time, letting the fire chase the ice from their veins. The house seemed to wake around them, creaking and groaning as the warmth spread through its bones. Clara found herself speaking to it in her mind. "We're not here to hurt you. We just need a place to rest." Foolish, she knew. Houses didn't listen. Houses didn't care. But something in the way the wind eased, the way the flames burned steady and strong, made her think maybe this one did. Tommy fell asleep against her shoulder, his breathing finally slow and even. Clara watched the fire, her mind churning with thoughts she couldn't quiet. They couldn't stay here. As soon as the storm passed, they'd have to keep moving. Mercer's men were out there somewhere, and they wouldn't stop until they found her. Until they silenced the only witness to what really happened to Daniel. "You should have sold when I asked nice Mrs. Whitmore." She could still hear Mercer's voice, smooth as snake oil, cold as the grave. He'd stood on her porch in Missouri, hat in hand, smile on his face, and made her an offer for Daniel's land. The land the railroad wanted. The land Daniel refused to sell. "Your husband made a mistake, ma'am. I'd hate to see you make the same one." 2 weeks later, Daniel was dead, shot in the back on his own property. The sheriff called it a robbery. Clara knew better. She'd packed up Tommy that same night and run. 18 months of running. And now here she was, trapped in an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but a dying fire and a 10-year-old boy who still believed his mama could fix anything. "I'm trying, Daniel," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm trying so hard." The fire popped and settled. Outside, the wind howled its endless song. Clara closed her eyes. She woke to silence. The storm had passed. Pale gray light filtered through the frost-covered windows. The fire had burned down to embers, but the room held enough warmth that her breath no longer fogged the air. Tommy still slept curled into a ball beneath her coat. She eased away from him, careful not to wake him, and stood. Her body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. Her hands were raw and cracked from the cold. But she was alive. They were alive. Clara walked through the house slowly, taking stock. The kitchen was bare, the pantry empty. But the bones were good. The roof held. The walls stood straight and true. Someone had built this place to last. She found a door at the back of the kitchen that led outside. The snow came up to her waist, but she waded through it, circling the house. A barn sat 50 yards away, half collapsed but still standing. Beyond it, nothing but white fields stretching to the horizon. Isolation. Safety. Or a trap with no way out. Clara was making her way back to the house when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Her heart seized. She spun toward the sound hand, reaching for the pistol at her hip. A rider emerged from the tree line. Dark coat, broad shoulders. His horse picked its way through the drifts with the sure-footedness of an animal that knew this land. Clara drew her gun. "That's far enough." The rider stopped, raised his hand slowly. "Easy, ma'am." His voice was low, steady. "I ain't here to cause trouble." "Then state your business and ride on." He tilted his head, studying her. Clara couldn't see his face clearly beneath the shadow of his hat, but she felt his gaze like a physical weight. "Saw smoke from your chimney this morning. Ain't seen smoke from the Hargrove place in 8 years. He lowered his hands, keeping them visible. "Figured I'd check if someone needed help." Clara kept the gun raised. "We don't need help." "With respect, ma'am, you're standing knee-deep in snow wearing a dress soaked through, holding a gun with hands that are shaking so bad you'd likely miss me even at this distance." He dismounted slowly. "I'd say you need help whether you want it or not." "I said stay back." He stopped. "Name's Jacob Hensley. I got a ranch about 5 miles east. Been riding this way every winter to check on the Hargrove house, make sure squatters ain't stripped it bare." He paused. "You ain't a squatter, are you?" "Does it matter? Might not." He took a step forward. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. "That wagon down the hill yours? What's left of it?" "Horse. Ran off in the storm." Jacob nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd already suspected. "So you got no wagon, no horse, and no supplies. Storm like last night, you're lucky to be breathing." "Luck had nothing to do with it." Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe. Or curiosity. "No, ma'am. I don't reckon it did." They stood there for a long moment, the snow swirling between them. Clara's arms ached from holding the gun up. Her whole body screamed for rest. But she'd trusted a stranger once before, and Daniel had paid for it with his life. "Please, ma'am." Jacob's voice softened. "I got no quarrel with you. I got a spare horse and supplies back at my place. Enough to get you through the next storm at least. Let me help." "Why? Why what? Why help us? You don't know us. You don't owe us nothing." Jacob was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't expected. 8 years ago, my wife and daughter got caught in a storm not much different from last night's. They were trying to get home from town. Snow came too fast. He paused. "I found them the next morning, 2 miles from our front door." Clara felt the words hit her like stones. Her grip on the gun wavered. "If someone had helped them," Jacob continued, "if someone had just opened their door and let them in, they'd still be alive." He met her eyes. "I can't change what happened to them, but I can make sure it don't happen to someone else." Clara stared at him. At the lines etched deep around his eyes. At the way he held himself, like a man carrying a burden too heavy to ever set down. She lowered the gun. "I got a boy inside. He's 10. He's scared of strangers, and he's got good reason to be." "I understand. You do anything to frighten him, I'll put a bullet in you before you can blink." Jacob almost smiled. Almost. "Yes, ma'am." Tommy was awake when Clara came back inside, huddled by the fire with her coat clutched around him. "Mama, I heard voices." "It's all right, baby." She knelt beside him. "There's a man outside. His name is Jacob. He's going to help us." Tommy's eyes went wide. "Is he one of the bad men?" "No." Clara smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "He's not one of them." "How do you know?" She didn't have a good answer for that. Just a feeling in her gut, the same feeling that had told her to run from Missouri, to keep moving west, to not give up, even when giving up seemed like the only choice left. "I just know." Tommy chewed his lip. "Papa used to say you were too trusting." "Papa said a lot of things." Clara pulled him close. "But right now, we need help. And this man is offering, so we're going to let him, and we're going to be careful, and we're going to survive. That's what Whitmores do, remember. Survive." "That's right." She stood and opened the door. Jacob waited on the porch, stamping snow from his boots. "Tommy," Clara said, "this is Mr. Hensley." Jacob removed his hat. His hair was dark, threaded with gray at the temples. His face was weathered, serious, but his eyes were kind. "Pleased to meet you, Tommy." Tommy didn't answer. He pressed against Clara's leg, watching Jacob with the wariness of a wild animal. "He'll warm up," Clara said. "Give him time." "Time's one thing I got plenty of." Jacob looked around the room, taking in the dying fire, the dusty furniture, the cold that still lingered in the corners. "You plan on staying here?" "Ain't got much choice. No wagon, no horse like you said. This place has been empty 8 years. Roof's solid, but the barn needs work. Well, might be frozen over." "I figured. You got any money?" "Some. Enough to buy supplies. Hire help." Clara lifted her chin. "Enough to manage." Jacob studied her for a long moment. She couldn't read his expression, and that unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said finally. "With supplies. A horse if I can spare one. Some tools for the barn." He put his hat back on. "Storm like that one don't usually come alone. Another one's brewing, I can feel it. You'll want to be ready." "Mr. Hensley." He stopped at the door. "Why are you doing this? Really?" He was quiet for a moment. When he answered, he didn't turn around. "Because that chimney's been cold too long, and some things deserve a second chance." He walked out into the snow. Clara watched him mount his horse and ride east, his dark figure growing smaller against the endless white until he vanished completely. "Mama?" Tommy tugged at her sleeve. "Is he coming back?" Clara thought about the look in Jacob Hensley's eyes, the weight of loss that lived there, the way he'd spoken about his wife and daughter. "Yeah, baby. I think he is." She closed the door against the cold. And for the first time in 18 months, she let herself feel something that might have been hope. That night, Clara found the letters. Tommy had fallen asleep again, exhausted from cold and fear and the simple effort of staying alive. Clara couldn't sleep. Her mind wouldn't stop churning, so she explored the house by candlelight, searching for anything useful. In the back of a closet beneath a pile of moth-eaten blankets, she found a wooden box. Inside were letters. Dozens of them tied with faded blue ribbon. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the handwriting was elegant, careful. She carried the box to the fireplace and began to read. "My dearest Elizabeth, the snow has come early this year, and I find myself counting the hours until you return from town. This house feels too large without you in it. Too quiet. Too cold. I have kept the fire burning as I promised. I will always keep it burning. Your devoted husband, Benjamin." Clara turned to the next letter and the next. They were all from Benjamin Hargrove to his wife Elizabeth. Love letters written over years. Some spoke of children, of laughter, of a life built together in this wild place. Others spoke of loneliness, of waiting, of a love so deep it ached. The last letter was dated 1871. "My dearest Elizabeth, I am writing this, knowing you will never read it. The sickness has taken you from me, and I am left alone in this house we built together. But I will not abandon it. I will not let our home die. I will keep the fire burning, my love, until my last breath. Yours eternally, Benjamin." Clara set the letter down, her hands trembling. This house had been loved, desperately, completely loved. And then it had been left alone, forgotten, while the world moved on without it. Just like her. Just like Tommy. "We'll take care of you," she whispered to the darkness. "I promise." The fire crackled. The wind pressed against the windows. And somewhere deep in the bones of the old house, Clara could have sworn she heard something settle. Something that sounded almost like a sigh. Yad. She was still sitting by the fire when she heard the horses. Not one horse, multiple. Clara was on her feet instantly, gun in hand. She shook Tommy awake. "Get up, now!" Mama, what's... Quiet. Do as I say. She pressed him into the corner behind the fireplace, the darkest spot in the room. Stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. She cupped his face in her hands. But I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Can you be brave for me? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. That's my boy. Clara moved to the window and peered through a crack in the frost. 3 riders approached from the west, their horses picking through the snow with purpose. She didn't recognize them, but she recognized the brand on their saddlebags. Mercer Railroad Company. Her blood turned to ice. They found us. After 18 months they found us. The lead rider dismounted and approached the house. He was big, broad-shouldered, with a face like a granite cliff. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at the window, right at her. Mrs. Whitmore, he called, his voice carrying through the cold air. Mr. Mercer sends his regards. Clara didn't answer. We know you're in there, ma'am. We've been tracking you since Colorado. You're a hard woman to find. He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. But not hard enough. Clara gripped her gun tighter. 3 men, 1 gun, 6 bullets. She could take 2 maybe before they got her. But then what happened to Tommy? Mr. Mercer wants to have a conversation, the man continued. That's all. Just a friendly conversation about some property back in Missouri. About what you might have seen, and what you might be willing to forget. I ain't forgetting nothing, Clara shouted back. And you can tell Mercer to go straight to hell. The man's smile faded. That ain't the smart play, Mrs. Whitmore. Maybe not, but it's the only one I got. Silence. The wind howled between them. Then the man turned to his companions. Search the barn. See if she's got a horse. We'll wait her out. Clara watched them spread out, one toward the barn, one circling the house. The leader standing in the snow, patient as death. She was trapped. No way out. No help coming. Just her and Tommy, and 3 men who would kill them both without a second thought. Daniel, she prayed. If you can hear me, if you're still watching over us, I need you now. I need a miracle. The wind answered, and somewhere in the distance she heard hoofbeats. The hoofbeats grew louder. Clara pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the crack in the frost-covered window, she watched the lead man turn toward the sound. Jacob Hensley rode out of the tree line like he owned the land itself. His rifle rested easy across his saddle, but his hand stayed close to the trigger. He pulled his horse to a stop 20 feet from Mercer's man. Morning. Jacob's voice carried flat and cold. You boys lost? The lead man's hand drifted toward his holster. This ain't your concern, friend. See, that's where you're wrong. Jacob didn't move, didn't blink. This here's Hargrove land. I've been looking after it 8 years. That makes it my concern. We're just here for a conversation with the lady inside. Lady don't seem interested in conversing. The 2 other men had stopped their search. They flanked their leader, now hands on their weapons, watching Jacob with the hungry eyes of wolves sizing up prey. Mister, I don't know who you are, the lead man said slowly, but you're about to make a real bad decision. Wouldn't be my first. Clara's breath caught. She'd known Jacob Hensley less than a day, and here he was putting himself between her and 3 armed men. For what? For a stranger. For a woman who'd pointed a gun at him that very morning. The lead man smiled. 3 against 1. You like them odds. I like 'em fine. Jacob shifted his weight, and something in the movement made all 3 men tense. Question is, which one of you wants to find out if I'm bluffing? Nobody moved. The wind howled across the empty fields, whipping snow into spirals between them. Then a voice called out from inside the house. Clara's voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. There's a rifle pointed at your head right now. She pressed closer to the window crack, letting them see the barrel of her pistol. "Your friend's right. 3 against 2. But I promise you this, the first man who moves is going to die, and I don't miss." The lead man's jaw tightened. He looked from Jacob to the window and back again. "This ain't over," he said finally. "Didn't think it was." The man mounted his horse and his companions followed. They rode west without looking back, but Clara knew they weren't leaving. They were regrouping, planning. They'd be back. Jacob waited until they disappeared beyond the ridge before he dismounted. Clara met him at the door, her gun still in her hand. "You didn't have to do that." "No, ma'am, I didn't." "Then why?" He looked at her for a long moment. Snow dusted his shoulders, melting into dark patches on his coat. "Because I know Mercer Railroad men when I see them, and I know what they do to folks who get in their way." He paused. "Your husband. That's why they're after you, ain't it? He wouldn't sell." Clara felt the words like a punch to the gut. "How did you—" "I seen it before. 3 families in this territory alone last 5 years. Holdouts who wouldn't take Mercer's money." Jacob's voice went hard. "Funny how they all ended up dead or disappeared." "Daniel didn't disappear." Clara's voice cracked. "They shot him in the back. On his own land. And then they called it a robbery." "I'm sorry." "Sorry don't bring him back." "No, it don't." They stood there in the cold, 2 strangers bound together by loss and circumstance. Then Tommy's voice broke the silence. "Mama!" Clara turned. Tommy stood in the doorway, pale as the snow around them. "Those were the bad men, weren't they? The ones who hurt Papa." Clara knelt and pulled him close. "They're gone now, baby. But they'll come back." She couldn't lie to him. Not about this. "Yeah, they will." Tommy looked up at Jacob with those 2 old eyes. "Are you gonna help us?" Jacob removed his hat and crouched down to Tommy's level. "I'm gonna try. That's what Papa said. Before they killed him." The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara watched Jacob's face, watched something shift behind his eyes. "Your Papa sounds like he was a brave man." "He was." "Then I reckon his son is brave too." Jacob stood. "And brave men don't give up. Not when things get hard. Not ever." Tommy studied him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Just a little. Just enough to breathe. "They'll be back before nightfall," Jacob said, turning to her. "Maybe sooner. We need to fortify this place. With what I got, 6 bullets and a house that's falling apart. You got more than that." Jacob looked at the old walls, the solid foundation, the stone fireplace that had survived 8 winters of neglect. "You got a home worth defending. That counts for something." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, but something in his voice stopped her. "What do you need me to do?" "First, we board up the windows. Make it harder for them to see in, harder for them to shoot through." He started toward his horse. "I got tools in my saddlebag. Nails hammer. Should be enough to—" "Wait." He turned. Clara swallowed hard. "Why are you really doing this? And don't give me that line about second chances. I need the truth." Jacob was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 4 years ago, I stood in this same spot. Watched a storm roll in from the west. My wife, Sarah, she'd gone to town for supplies. Took our daughter Emma with her." He paused. "I told myself the storm would pass. Told myself they'd find shelter. Told myself everything would be fine. But it wasn't." "No, ma'am, it wasn't." He met her eyes. "I found them 2 miles from home. Frozen solid. Sarah was holding Emma in her arms, trying to keep her warm. They died like that. Together." Clara felt tears burn her eyes. "Jacob." "I couldn't save them. Couldn't even give them a proper goodbye. For 4 years I've been living with that. 4 years of wondering what I could have done different. His voice hardened. I ain't gonna stand by and watch another woman and child die. Not while I got breath in my body. Clara didn't know what to say. There were no words for grief like that, no comfort that could touch it, so she did the only thing she could. She reached out and took his hand, just for a moment, just long enough to let him know he wasn't alone. Then let's get to work. The next few hours passed in a blur of hammering and hauling. Jacob worked with the efficiency of a man who'd spent his whole life building things with his hands. Clara matched him swing for swing, ignoring the blisters forming on her palms. Tommy helped where he could, fetching nails and holding boards steady. Somewhere along the way, he started talking to Jacob. Small things at first. Questions about the horse, about the ranch, about what it was like to live out here alone. Jacob answered each one with patience Clara hadn't expected. He didn't talk down to Tommy or brush him off. He treated him like a person whose questions mattered. And slowly, so slowly, Clara almost missed it. Tommy began to relax. Mr. Hensley. Yeah, son. Did you ever have a boy like me? Clara froze. She saw Jacob's hands go still on the board he was holding. No, he said quietly. Just my Emma. She was about your age when... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I bet she was nice, Tommy said. She was. Jacob's voice was rough. She was the nicest person I ever knew. I'm sorry you lost her. Jacob looked down at the boy, and Clara saw something crack open in his face. Something raw and wounded that he'd been carrying for years. Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate that. Tommy nodded solemnly, then went back to sorting nails like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just reached into a stranger's chest and touched the most broken part of him. Clara watched Jacob turn back to his work, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. And she thought maybe, just maybe, this house wasn't the only thing that needed saving. By late afternoon, the windows were boarded and the doors reinforced. Jacob had rigged a simple alarm system with rope and tin cans strung across the approaches to the house. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it would give them warning. That's all we can do for now, he said, wiping his hands on his pants. They won't try nothing fancy in daylight, too exposed. They'll wait till dark. How many hours? 4, maybe 5. Clara looked out at the fading light. Then we've got 4 hours to figure out how to survive the night. We'll survive. Jacob checked his rifle, then set it by the door. I've lived through worse. Have you? He met her eyes. Ask me again in the morning. They ate what little food Jacob had brought, dried meat and hard biscuits that tasted like sawdust. Tommy fell asleep by the fire, exhausted from the day's work and fear. Clara sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. He looks like his father. She looked up. Jacob stood by the window, keeping watch. He does. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. She smiled faintly. Same way of asking questions you can't answer. He's a good kid. He's scared. He's been scared for 18 months. Fear don't make you weak. Jacob turned to look at her. It's what you do with it that matters. What if I don't know what to do anymore? The question came out before she could stop it. All the doubt, all the exhaustion, all the terror she'd been holding at bay spilling out in 6 small words. Jacob crossed the room and sat down across from her. Close but not too close. Respectful of the space between them. You got your boy out of Missouri. You kept him alive for 18 months on the run. You found this house in the middle of a blizzard and made it shelter. He leaned forward. You know exactly what to do, Clara. You've been doing it all along. She felt tears threaten again. I'm so tired. I know. I can't keep running forever. Then don't. His voice was steady. Make your stand. Right here. Right now. With what? A busted house and a handful of bullets. With everything you got. Jacob's eyes held hers. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all it takes. Clara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. Why do you care what happens to us? I told you. Not about Sarah and Emma. About me. About us. She shook her head. You could have ridden away. Left us to Mercer's men. Nobody would have blamed you. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was so low, she had to lean in to hear it. Because when I saw you this morning standing in the snow with that gun in your hand, I saw something I ain't seen in a long time. He paused. I saw someone worth fighting for. Clara's heart stuttered. You don't know me. No, I don't. He stood. But I'd like to, if you'll let me. Before she could respond, the tin cans rattled. Jacob was at the window in an instant, rifle in hand. They're early, he said quietly. Clara grabbed her pistol and shook Tommy awake. Baby, I need you to hide, now. Mama. Now Tommy. He scrambled behind the fireplace, pressing himself into the shadows. Clara joined Jacob at the window. In the fading light, she could see shapes moving through the snow. More than 3 this time. She counted 5, maybe 6. Mercer sent reinforcements. Looks like. Can we hold them? Jacob checked his ammunition. Guess we're about to find out. The first shot came through the boarded window, splintering wood inches from Clara's head. She ducked, heart racing, and fired back through the gap. A cry of pain. 1 down. Jacob's rifle cracked twice, and 2 more men fell back. Kitchen door! Clara shouted. She ran, reaching the back of the house just as the door crashed inward. A man filled the frame, gun raised. Clara didn't think. She just fired. He dropped. She stepped over his body and slammed what was left of the door shut, shoving a chair against it. Another shot from the front room. Then another. Clara. She ran back to find Jacob bleeding from a gash on his arm, but still standing. Still fighting. Just a graze, he said before she could ask. Outside, someone shouted orders. The shooting stopped. Then a voice Clara recognized. The lead man from that morning. Mrs. Whitmore, this is your last chance. Come out now and we'll let your boy live. Clara's blood ran cold. Don't listen to them, Jacob said. They'll kill him. They'll kill both of you. They'll kill all of us if you go out there. He grabbed her arm. Think. They want you silent. You're the only one who can connect Mercer to your husband's death. If you die, his secret dies with you. And if I don't, then we fight, together, until we can't fight no more. Clara looked toward the fireplace where Tommy huddled in the shadows. Her boy. Her whole world. Mama! His voice was small, terrified. I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. She turned back to the window. You want me? She shouted. Come and get me. The shooting started again. They fought through the night. Wave after wave of Mercer's men testing their defenses, probing for weakness. Clara lost count of how many times she reloaded, how many men she hit, how many near misses took years off her life. Jacob was everywhere at once, covering every gap, every breach. He moved like a man possessed, like he had nothing left to lose. Maybe he didn't. Sometime past midnight, the attack stopped. Clara slumped against the wall, every muscle screaming. Her hands were raw and bleeding. Her ears rang from gunfire. But she was alive. They were all alive. They're falling back, Jacob said, peering through a gap in the boards. Running low on men, I'd wager. They'll get more. Probably. And then... Jacob turned to look at her. In the firelight, his face was streaked with blood and soot. And then we do it all over again. He almost smiled. You're one hell of a shot, Mrs. Whitmore. Clara? What? Call me Clara. She let her head fall back against the wall. After tonight, I think you've earned it. Clara. He said it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. All right then, Clara. Tommy emerged from his hiding spot and crossed to his mother. He didn't say anything, just climbed into her lap and held on. Clara wrapped her arms around him and closed her eyes. Outside, the wind howled across the empty fields. Inside, the fire burned on. And for the first time in 18 months, Clara Whitmore wasn't running. She was standing her ground. The next morning, Jacob rode out before dawn. Clara watched him go from the porch. Tommy pressed against her side. Where's he going? To get help. He knows people in town. She squeezed Tommy's shoulder. He'll be back. Promise? Clara thought about the way Jacob had looked at her last night, the way he'd said her name. Yeah, baby. I promise. 3 hours later, she heard horses again. But this time, it wasn't Mercer's men. Jacob rode at the head of a column of riders, a dozen at least, armed and grim-faced. Behind them came a wagon loaded with supplies. Clara walked out to meet them, barely believing her eyes. What is this? This, Jacob said, dismounting, is Stillwater Creek. They heard about what happened. They want to help. A gray-haired man stepped forward. Name's Ezra Pike, ma'am. Me and these boys, we lost friends to Mercer's Railroad. Figured it was time to stop losing. You'd risk your lives for strangers. No, ma'am. Ezra smiled. We'd risk our lives for neighbors. Clara felt something crack inside her, something hard and cold that she'd been carrying for 18 months. I don't know what to say. Don't say nothing. Jacob moved to stand beside her. Just let us help. She looked at the men who'd come to fight for her, at Tommy watching from the porch with wide eyes, at Jacob Hensley battered and bleeding, but still standing. Okay, she said quietly. Let's make this place worth defending. They worked together through the day, fortifying, planning, preparing, and when night came again, they were ready. But Mercer's men didn't attack. The next day, a rider came from town with news. Clayton Mercer himself was coming to finish what his men couldn't. Clara looked at Jacob. Jacob looked back. Then let him come, she said. And the war for the Hargrove house had only just begun. Let me write this with high tension, lots of dialogue, emotional beats, and mini climaxes throughout. Clayton Mercer arrived 3 days later. Clara saw the dust rising from the east road before she heard the hooves. She set down the bucket she'd been carrying and wiped her hands on her apron. Jacob. He was beside her in an instant, rifle already in hand. I see it. How many? Hard to say. 20, maybe more. 20 men against their 12. Clara felt her stomach clench, but she kept her voice steady. Get everyone into position. Jacob nodded and moved off, barking orders. The men of Stillwater Creek scrambled to their posts, faces grim. They'd known this was coming. They'd prepared for it. But knowing and facing were two different things. Tommy appeared at Clara's elbow. Mama, is it him? Is it the man who hurt Papa? Clara knelt and took his face in her hands. I need you to go to the root cellar. Remember where Mr. Pike showed you. I want to stay with you. I know, baby, but I need to know you're safe. Can you do that for me? Tommy's lip trembled, but he nodded. That's my brave boy. Clara kissed his forehead. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, you stay hidden until I come for you. Promise me. I promise. She watched him run toward the back of the house, her heart breaking with every step. Then she turned to face what was coming. The riders crested the hill in a line, spreading out like a wave. At their center rode a man on a black horse, his coat immaculate despite the dust, his silver hair gleaming beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Clayton Mercer. Clara had seen him only once before, the day he came to their farm in Missouri. She remembered his smile, smooth and cold as river ice. She remembered how his eyes had swept over their land, like he already owned it. She remembered Daniel's voice afterward, tight with anger. That man ain't human, Clara. He's got nothing inside but greed. Mercer halted his horse 50 yards from the house. His men fanned out behind him, a wall of guns and hard faces. "Mrs. Whitmore," his voice carried easily across the distance. "What a pleasure to see you again." Clara stepped off the porch. Jacob moved to follow, but she held up her hand. "Stay back. This is between me and him." "Clara," I said, "stay back." She walked forward until she stood in the open ground between the house and Mercer's line. 20 guns pointed at her chest. She didn't flinch. "Mr. Mercer, you've come a long way to find me." "Indeed I have." He dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd never worked a day in his life. 18 months, Mrs. Whitmore. 18 months you've led my men on a merry chase across 3 territories. I must admit, I'm impressed. I'm not here to impress you. No, you're here because you're stubborn. He took a step closer. Just like your husband. Clara's hand moved to the pistol at her hip. Mercer wagged his finger. "Let's keep this civilized. I didn't ride all this way for bloodshed." "Then what did you ride for?" "The same thing I've always wanted." He spread his hands. "Your silence, your land, and your signature on a few documents. My husband is dead because of you. Your husband is dead because he was foolish." Mercer's smile never wavered. He had the chance to sell. He chose pride instead. Pride doesn't keep a family warm, Mrs. Whitmore. Pride doesn't put food on the table. Neither does murder. Something flickered in Mercer's eyes, just for a moment. Then the mask was back. Murder is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as removing obstacles. He clasped his hands behind his back. "Now here's my offer. You sign over the deed to your Missouri property, and I'll let you and your boy disappear. New names, new life somewhere far from here. You'll never see me again." "And if I refuse?" Mercer glanced toward the house. "That's a fine collection of neighbors you've gathered. 12 men, if my count is right. Good men, I'm sure. Men with families of their own." He turned back to her. "I have 20, and more on the way. How many of your friends are you willing to sacrifice for your stubbornness?" Clara felt the weight of the question pressing down on her. She thought of Ezra Pike, who'd lost his wife to fever and his son to the war. She thought of the young men who'd ridden from Stillwater Creek, who had wives and children waiting for them to come home. She thought of Jacob standing on that porch with his rifle ready to die for a woman he barely knew. "You think you can buy me with threats?" "I think I can buy anything, Mrs. Whitmore. It's simply a matter of finding the right price." Mercer's smile sharpened. "Everyone has one." "Not me." "No." "Then perhaps we should discuss your son." Clara's blood turned to ice. "Tommy isn't it 10 years old? Clever boy from what my men tell me." Mercer took another step forward. "Children are so fragile, Mrs. Whitmore, so easy to break." The pistol was in Clara's hand before she knew she'd drawn it. She pressed the barrel against Mercer's forehead. "Say his name again. I dare you." Behind her, she heard the click of 20 hammers being pulled back. Mercer didn't move, didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on hers. "There she is," he said softly. "There's the woman who's been running from me all these months. I wondered when she'd show herself. Call off your men. Or what, you'll shoot me." He laughed. "Go ahead. Pull the trigger. My men have orders to burn this house to the ground if anything happens to me. Your boy is hiding in the root cellar, isn't he? How long do you think he'll last when the smoke starts filling those tunnels?" Clara's hand shook. Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Clara!" Jacob's voice calm and steady. "Don't." "He killed Daniel. He's threatening my son." "I know, but if you shoot him now, we all die. Tommy dies." She heard him move closer. "That ain't how this ends. Not today." Clara's arm ached. Her vision blurred with tears of rage. But Jacob was right. God help her, he was right. She lowered the gun. Mercer straightened his coat, as calm as if they'd been discussing the weather. "A wise decision. Now shall we continue our negotiation?" There's nothing to negotiate. Of course there is. There's always something. He turned and walked back toward his horse. I'll give you until sunset to consider my offer. After that, I'm afraid I'll have to take what I want by force. And how many of your men are you willing to lose? Mercer paused, one foot in the stirrup. As many as it takes, Mrs. Whitmore. That's the difference between us. You're fighting for something you love. I'm fighting for something I want. He mounted. And men who want always beat men who love. In the end, we're willing to go further. He turned his horse and rode back to his line. His men followed, wheeling away toward a ridge half a mile distant. Clara stood in the empty field until they were out of sight. Then her legs gave out and she sank to her knees in the snow. Jacob was beside her in seconds. Clara, look at me. He knows where Tommy is. He knows everything. We'll move him. Find somewhere safer. There is nowhere safer. She looked up at him, tears freezing on her cheeks. Don't you understand he's not going to stop? Not ever. Not until he gets what he wants. Then we make sure he don't get it. How you heard him? 20 men, more coming. I heard a man who's scared. Jacob crouched down, his face level with hers. He came all this way himself. That tells me something. What? That his men have failed too many times. That his bosses back east are getting impatient. That you've cost him more than he expected. Jacob took her hands in his. He's desperate, Clara. Desperate men make mistakes. Clara wanted to believe him, but all she could see was Mercer's cold smile. All she could hear was the threat against her son. What do? We fight, same as we've been doing. Jacob pulled her to her feet. But first we need to find out why this land matters so much to him. Clara frowned. The railroad. He wants to build through here. No. Jacob shook his head. There's easier routes than this. Cheaper routes. I've lived here 8 years, Clara. This land ain't worth the trouble he's gone through. He looked toward the house. There's something else. Something he ain't telling us. How do we find out? The letters. The ones you found. Jacob started walking. Benjamin Hargrove built this place in 1858. He lived here till 1871, 13 years. A man writes a lot of letters in 13 years. I read them all. Love letters to his wife. Nothing about the land. Then we read them again. Look for anything we might have missed. They spent the next 2 hours going through Benjamin Hargrove's letters. Clara read each one aloud, while Jacob listened, searching for patterns, for clues. It was Tommy who found it. He'd crept out of the cellar, despite Clara's orders, unable to stay hidden while his mother was in danger. Clara didn't have the heart to scold him. She just pulled him close and let him help. Mama, what's this word? He pointed to a passage in one of the older letters. Clara squinted at the faded ink. Copper. It says copper. What's copper? Jacob went still. Read that whole part. Clara cleared her throat. The assayer came again today. He says the deposits run deep, maybe deeper than any in the territory. I told him to keep quiet about it. Elizabeth and I have no interest in mining. We came here for peace, not profit. But I worry sometimes. If the wrong people find out what lies beneath our land, they will stop at nothing to take it. Silence. Then Jacob laughed, a rough, surprised sound that echoed off the walls. Copper. Son of a gun. It's copper. I don't understand. Don't you see? The railroad don't want your Missouri land. They want this land, the Hargrove place, because there's copper underneath it and copper's worth a fortune. Jacob's eyes were bright. Mercer's been lying to you this whole time. He don't care about your signature on some Missouri deed. He wants you out of this house because you're sitting on a gold mine. But I don't own this house. You've been living here. You've been improving it. Under territory law, that's squatters' rights. Stay long enough, make enough improvements, and the land becomes yours. Jacob grabbed her shoulders. That's why he's so desperate. That's why he followed you across 3 territories. If you establish a claim here, he loses everything. Clara's mind raced. 18 months of running, of hiding, of believing she was the target. And all along, she'd been sitting on the one thing Mercer wanted most. Then we have to find proof, documentation, something that shows what's under this land. The assayers report. If Benjamin kept it, it'd be somewhere in this house. They searched. Every drawer, every cupboard, every loose floorboard. The afternoon wore on, and sunset crept closer. Finally, Ezra Pike called out from the attic. "Found something!" Clara climbed the ladder to find the old man holding a metal box, rusted but intact. Was hidden in the rafters. Someone didn't want it found easy. Clara took the box with trembling hands. Inside were documents yellowed and fragile. An official survey from 1859. An assayer's certificate. Maps marked with deposit locations. And a deed. Made out to Benjamin Hargrove. Signed and sealed by the territorial governor himself. "This is it," Clara breathed. "This is everything." "What do we do with it?" Ezra asked. "We get it to someone who can use it. A judge, a newspaper, someone Mercer can't buy." She looked toward the window where the sun was touching the western hills. "But first, we have to survive the night." They gathered in the main room as the light faded. 12 men, 1 woman, 1 boy, against 20 guns and a man who'd kill them all without blinking. Jacob stood by the window watching the ridge where Mercer's men waited. "They'll come after dark. Use the confusion to hit us from all sides. Can we hold them? Maybe, maybe not." He turned to face the room. "Any man who wants to leave, now's the time. Nobody will think less of you." Nobody moved. Ezra Pike spat on the floor. "I didn't ride all this way to run from some railroad dandy." A murmur of agreement rippled through the men. Jacob nodded. "Then we fight." The attack came 2 hours after sunset. They heard the horses first, a rumble of hooves from 3 directions at once. Then the gunfire started, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like angry stars. Clara fired from the upstairs window, picking her shots, making each bullet count. Beside her, Jacob worked his rifle with deadly precision. Below, Ezra and the others held the doors, fighting off wave after wave of Mercer's men. A scream. One of the Stillwater men fell, clutching his shoulder. "Get him to the back room!" Clara shouted. They dragged him away while others filled the gap. The fighting went on. Minutes that felt like hours. Clara's arms burned. Her ears rang. Her throat was raw from the smoke. Then Jacob grabbed her arm. "Look!" Through the chaos, she saw it. A torch sailing through the air, landing on the porch roof. Fire. "No!" Clara ran for the stairs. Jacob caught her. "Clara, wait. They're going to burn us out." "I know, but running out there is suicide." She struggled against him. "My son is in this house, and he'll stay alive as long as we stay smart." He forced her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. I've got a plan, but I need you to trust me." "Jacob, do you trust me?" The fire was spreading. She could hear it crackling, hungry and growing. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." "Then get Tommy and the wounded to the cellar. The rest of us will hold them off as long as we can." "What are you going to do?" Jacob checked his pistol. "Something stupid." He kissed her. It was sudden and fierce, over almost before it began. Then he was gone, out the back door and into the night. Clara stood there for 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she moved. She found Tommy in the root cellar, curled in a ball, his hands over his ears. She pulled him up and held him tight. "Mama, I'm so scared." "I know, baby, I know, but we're going to be okay. Promise." She thought of Jacob running into the darkness. She thought of the fire eating away at the only shelter they had. "I promise." The explosion came 10 minutes later. It shook the ground, rattled the walls, sent dust raining down from the cellar ceiling. Tommy screamed and buried his face in Clara's shoulder. Then silence. A silence so complete it hurt. Clara waited, counting the seconds, counting her heartbeats. Footsteps above. The cellar door flew open. Ezra Pike's face appeared covered in soot but grinning. It worked. By God, it worked. What worked? What happened? Your man Hensley. He circled around to their supply wagon, blew it sky high, took out half their ammunition and spooked their horses. Ezra laughed. Mercer's boys are scattering like roaches in sunlight. Clara climbed out of the cellar, Tommy clinging to her hand. The porch was gone, burned to ash. Part of the roof had caved in, but the house still stood. And in the yard, lit by the dying flames, stood Jacob Hensley. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. His coat was torn. His hands were black with powder burns. He was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Clara ran to him. She didn't stop until she was in his arms. "You're alive. Takes more than a little fire to kill me. Don't you ever do that again. Do what saved your life. Leave without saying goodbye." He pulled back, looking down at her. "I did say goodbye. I kissed you." "That's not—" She stopped. "You kissed me." "I did." "Why?" "Because I've been wanting to since the first moment I saw you standing in the snow with a gun pointed at my head." He touched her face. "Because if I was going to die, I wanted to die knowing what that felt like." Clara felt tears burning her eyes again, but these weren't tears of fear. "We're not going to die," she said. "No, ma'am. I don't reckon we are." Around them, the men of Stillwater Creek were putting out the last of the flames. The night air smelled of smoke and gunpowder, and something that might have been hope. But the fight wasn't over. Because out there in the darkness, Clayton Mercer was still alive. And men like him never stopped until they got what they wanted, or until someone stopped them for good. Tommy tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Mama, is Mr. Jacob going to stay with us now?" Clara looked at Jacob. He looked back at her. "Yeah, baby," she said softly. "I think he is." The next morning they found Mercer's camp abandoned. His men had fled in the night, leaving behind equipment, supplies, and something else. A body. Not Mercer himself. One of his lieutenants, the big man who'd come to the house that first day. He lay in the snow with a bullet hole in his chest and a letter clutched in his frozen hand. Jacob pried it loose and read it aloud. "It's from Mercer. To his men. Orders to fall back to Stillwater Creek and wait for reinforcements." He looked up. "He's not done. He's just regrouping." "How long do we have?" "A week, maybe. Depends on how fast his message reaches the railroad bosses back east." Clara looked at the documents in her hands. The proof that could bring Mercer down. "Then we've got a week to end this." "How?" She thought of Daniel. Of 18 months of running. Of the fire that had nearly taken everything. "We take the fight to him." Jacob stared at her. "Clara." "He's been hunting me since Missouri. Killing everyone who got in his way. Burning everything I try to build." "Yeah." Her voice hardened. "I'm done running. I'm done hiding. If he wants a war, I'll give him one. This ain't like defending a house. This is going after a man with money power connections. And I've got proof." She held up the documents. "Proof that he's been lying to his bosses. Proof that he murdered my husband. Proof that could destroy everything he's built." She stepped closer. "I just need to get it to the right people." "And who are the right people?" Clara smiled. A cold, determined smile that Jacob had never seen before. "The newspaper in Cheyenne. The territorial marshal. Every person who's ever lost land or family to Mercer's railroad." She turned to face the men gathered around her. "Who's with me?" One by one they stepped forward. Ezra Pike, the young men of Stillwater Creek. Even Tommy, his small hand raised in solidarity. And Jacob Hensley, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'm with you," he said quietly. "Till the end." Clara reached out and took his hand. "Then let's finish this. Let me write this with high tension, lots of dialogue, emotional beats, and the Western style." They rode out at first light. Clara sat astride a borrowed horse, the documents tucked inside her coat against her heart. Tommy rode double with Ezra Pike, the old man's arms steady around the boy. Jacob flanked her right-side rifle across his saddle, eyes scanning the horizon. 6 men from Stillwater Creek came with them. The rest stayed behind to guard the house. "Cheyenne's 3 days' ride," Jacob said. "If we push hard, then we push hard." The first day passed without incident. They kept to the back trails, avoiding the main roads where Mercer's men might be watching. By nightfall, Clara's legs ached and her back screamed from hours in the saddle, but she didn't complain. She'd endured worse. They made camp in a shallow ravine, no fire to give away their position. Tommy curled against her side, shivering in the cold. "Mama, are we gonna win?" Clara stroked his hair. "We're gonna try." "What if we don't?" "Then we'll try again, and again, until we do." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Papa used to say that, about the farm. He said Whitmores don't give up. He was right. "I miss him." "I know, baby. I miss him too." She held him until he fell asleep, his breath warm against her neck. Then she lay awake staring at the stars, wondering if Daniel could see them from wherever he was. Wondering if he'd be proud of what she was doing. Jacob appeared beside her, moving quiet as a shadow. "Can't sleep." "Too much thinking." He settled down next to her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Want to talk about it?" "I keep wondering if I'm doing the right thing, dragging all these people into my fight." "They chose to come. Nobody forced them. But if something happens to them, then it happens." Jacob's voice was gentle but firm. "Clara, these men ain't following you because they feel sorry for you. They're following you because you're doing what they've been too scared to do themselves. Standing up, fighting back. What if it's not enough? What if it is?" He turned to look at her. "You spent 18 months running, hiding, surviving. And in all that time, Mercer never caught you. Never broke you. That means something. It means I got lucky. It means you're stronger than you know." He reached out and touched her face just briefly. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's gonna be a long day." She caught his hand before he could pull away. "Jacob, thank you." "For what?" "For believing in me. Even when I don't believe in myself." He smiled, and something in Clara's chest turned over. "That's the easy part." The second day brought trouble. They were crossing a frozen creek when the shot rang out. Clara's horse reared. She grabbed the reins, fighting to stay in the saddle. Around her, men scattered, reaching for weapons. "Ambush!" Jacob shouted. "Get to cover!" Another shot. A bullet whined past Clara's ear. She threw herself from the horse and rolled behind a fallen log, pistol in hand. Tommy. Where was Tommy? She scanned the chaos and found him. Ezra had pulled him off the horse and was shielding him with his body. More shots. The attackers were somewhere in the trees to the north, using the high ground. Jacob appeared beside her, bleeding from a graze on his arm. "You hit?" "No. You?" "Just a scratch." He peered over the log. "I count 4, maybe 5 shooters." "Mercer's men." "Has to be. They must have picked up our trail." Clara's mind raced. They were pinned down. If they stayed here, they'd be picked off one by one. "We need to move." "Move where they've got us boxed in." She looked around, searching for options. 50 yards to the left, a narrow gully wound into the hillside. If they could reach it, they might be able to circle around. "There," she pointed. "That gully. Take the men and flank them." "What about you?" "I'll keep them busy. Draw their fire." "Clara, that's suicide." "Just trust me." She grabbed his arm. "Get Tommy out of here. Whatever happens, get him somewhere safe." Jacob's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he would argue. Then he nodded. "You've got 5 minutes. Then I'm coming back for you." He moved off, gathering the men with quick hand signals. Clara watched them go, watched Ezra scoop up Tommy and carry him toward the gully. Then she stood up and started shooting. The bullets kicked up snow around her feet. She ran zigzagging, firing blind toward the tree line. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. One shooter fell, then another. Clara dove behind a rock outcropping, reloading with shaking hands. 3 left, maybe more, and she was almost out of ammunition. "Mrs. Whitmore," a voice echoed across the creek. "There's nowhere to run." She recognized it. The same cold, smooth voice she'd heard in Missouri. The same voice that had threatened her son. Mercer. "Come out and face me, you coward," she shouted back. Laughter. "Such fire. I can see why my men have had such trouble with you. Your men are dead, most of them anyway. Men can be replaced. But you, Mrs. Whitmore..." The voice grew closer. "You are something special, something I don't encounter very often." Clara pressed herself against the rock, trying to pinpoint his location. If she could just get one clean shot. "Do you know why I came after you personally?" Mercer continued. "It wasn't the land. It wasn't even the copper. It was you. Your refusal to break. Your insistence on fighting when any sensible woman would have given up long ago. You killed my husband. I removed an obstacle. Your husband was a fool who couldn't see the future. The railroad is progress, Mrs. Whitmore. It's civilization coming to these savage lands. And anyone who stands in its way gets murdered. Gets left behind." His voice was closer now, much closer. "I'm giving you one last chance. Hand over those documents, and I'll let you and your boy disappear. Start over somewhere else. Somewhere I'll never find you. You expect me to believe that. I expect you to be rational. You've seen what I'm capable of. You've seen what I'm willing to do." A pause. "Do you really want your son to grow up without a mother?" Clara closed her eyes. Tommy's face flashed before her. His smile, his laugh. The way he looked at her like she could fix anything. Could she really risk everything for justice, for revenge? Then she thought of Daniel, of the night he died, of the promise she'd made over his grave. She opened her eyes. My son is going to grow up knowing his mother fought for what was right, that she didn't run, that she didn't give up. She stood, stepping out from behind the rock, and he's going to grow up knowing that men like you can be beaten. Mercer stood 20 feet away, a pistol in his hand. His silver hair was disheveled, his expensive coat torn. He looked nothing like the polished businessman who'd come to her farm in Missouri. He looked like what he really was. A predator cornered. Then you've chosen death. I've chosen to stop being afraid. She raised her gun. Mercer raised his. The shots echoed across the valley like thunder. Clara felt the bullet tear through her shoulder before she heard the sound. The impact spun her around, sent her crashing to the ground. Her gun flew from her hand. Pain, white-hot and blinding. She tried to move, tried to reach her weapon, but her arm wouldn't obey. Mercer walked toward her, his pistol smoking. A pity. You would have made an excellent ally, in another life. Go to hell. Eventually. He aimed at her head. But not today. Clara closed her eyes. The shot came, but not from Mercer's gun. She heard him scream, heard the clatter of his pistol hitting the rocks. When she opened her eyes, Jacob was standing over him, rifle in hand. Step away from her. Mercer clutched his shattered hand, blood streaming between his fingers. You've made a terrible mistake, friend. Only mistake I made was not shooting you sooner. Jacob kicked the pistol away and knelt beside Clara. How bad? I'll live. She tried to sit up. The pain nearly made her black out. Tommy. Safe. Ezra's got him. The documents. Still in your coat. I checked. Jacob's hands were gentle as he examined her wound. Bullet went clean through. That's good. But you're losing blood fast. Then we need to move. You need a doctor. I need to get to Cheyenne. She grabbed his arm with her good hand. Jacob, please. We're so close. If we stop now. If we don't stop, you'll die. Then I die. Her voice cracked. But those documents get where they're going. Promise me. Jacob's face twisted with emotions she couldn't read. Clara, promise me. He was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. I promise. They bound her wound as best they could and got her back on a horse. Every step was agony. Clara bit down on a strip of leather to keep from screaming. Mercer they left tied to a tree, his men scattered or dead. He'd survive. Someone would find him. But by then, it would be too late. You'll regret this, he shouted after them. Every last one of you, I'll hunt you down. I'll destroy everything you love. Clara didn't look back. They rode through the night pushing harder than they should have. By dawn, Clara was burning with fever. By midday, she could barely stay in the saddle. We have to stop, Ezra said. She ain't gonna make it like this. I'm fine. Clara's voice came out as a whisper. Keep moving. Jacob pulled his horse alongside hers. Clara, look at me. She tried to focus. His face swam before her eyes. We're 2 hours from Cheyenne. 2 hours. Can you hold on that long? I can hold on forever. He almost smiled. That's my girl. Those 2 hours were the longest of Clara's life. She drifted in and out of consciousness, the world fading to gray around her. Sometimes she heard voices. Daniel's voice telling her to keep fighting. Her mother's voice singing lullabies from her childhood. And Tommy's voice, small and scared, asking if his mama was going to be okay. I'm okay, baby, she mumbled. Mama's okay. She didn't know if she was lying. They reached Cheyenne as the sun was setting. Jacob carried her into the first building they saw, a general store with a back room that served as a makeshift doctor's office. The doctor was a grizzled old man with whiskey on his breath and steady hands. He took one look at Clara and shook his head. This woman should be dead. She ain't. Jacob's voice was rough. And you're gonna make sure she stays that way. I'll do what I can, but I ain't making no promises. They operated right there on a table covered in flour sacks. Clara screamed until her voice gave out. Then she just whimpered, her hand crushing Jacob's until the bones creaked. When it was over, she lay still as death, her breathing shallow and ragged. Will she make it? Tommy asked, his face streaked with tears. The doctor wiped his hands on a bloody rag. Ask me in the morning. That night, Jacob sat by her bedside, the documents spread before him. He read through them again and again, making sure he understood everything they contained. Clara woke once, just before midnight. Jacob, I'm here. Did we make it? We made it. The documents? Safe. I'm taking them to the newspaper first thing tomorrow, then the marshal. She closed her eyes. Good. That's good. Clara. He took her hand. Why didn't you tell me you were hit? Back at the creek, you could have said something. There wasn't time. There's always time. Not for me. She opened her eyes and looked at him. I've spent 18 months running out of time. Every day wondering if it would be my last. Every night waiting for Mercer's men to find us. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm so tired, Jacob. I'm so tired of being afraid. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He leaned forward. Because I'm going to be right here. Every day. Every night. For as long as you'll let me. That could be a long time. I'm counting on it. She smiled, weak but real. You're a fool, Jacob Hensley. Maybe. But I'm your fool if you'll have me. Clara reached up and touched his face. I'll have you. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time in 18 months, Clara Whitmore fell asleep without fear. The next morning, Jacob went to the Cheyenne Tribune. The editor was a young man named Samuel Porter, fresh from the East and hungry for a story that would make his name. When he saw the documents, his eyes went wide. "This is... My God, do you know what this means?" "I know exactly what it means. Clayton Mercer, murder, fraud, bribery." Porter shuffled through the papers. "If this is true, it'll bring down the whole operation, maybe the whole railroad." "It's true. I'll need to verify these, talk to witnesses. The widow, Mrs. Whitmore, is recovering from a gunshot wound. She's in no condition to talk to anyone." "But surely..." "She's in no condition." Jacob's voice went hard. "Print what you've got. That's enough." Porter hesitated. Then he nodded. "It'll be in tomorrow's edition. Front page." "Good." Jacob turned to leave. "One more thing." "Yes. If anyone comes asking about where you got these documents, you never saw me. You never saw any of us." "I understand." Jacob walked out into the cold morning air. He'd done what he promised. Now there was only one thing left to do. He went to see the marshal. Thomas Wright was a veteran lawman, gray-haired and skeptical of everything. He listened to Jacob's story without interrupting, his face unreadable. When Jacob finished, Wright was silent for a long moment. "That's quite a tale, Mr. Hensley." "It ain't a tale. It's the truth. And you've got proof. The newspaper's got copies. I've got originals." Jacob laid the documents on the desk. "Everything you need to arrest Clayton Mercer and shut down his operation." Wright picked up the papers and examined them slowly. "You know who you're going up against. Mercer's got friends in high places, politicians, judges, even some lawmen." "I know. This could get you killed. That's a risk I'm willing to take." Wright studied him. "Why? What's a woman you barely know worth to you?" Jacob thought about Clara, about the way she'd stood up to Mercer with a bullet in her shoulder, about the way she held her son, about the way she'd kissed him back. "Everything," he said quietly. "She's worth everything." Wright nodded slowly. "Then I reckon I better do my job." He stood up and reached for his hat. "Where are we going?" "To find Mercer, before he finds us." They found him 3 days later, holed up in a mining camp 30 miles south of Cheyenne. The newspaper story had spread like wildfire. Investors were pulling out. Politicians were distancing themselves. The empire Clayton Mercer had spent 20 years building was crumbling around him. Wright brought 20 deputies. They surrounded the camp at dawn. "Clayton Mercer," Wright's voice echoed across the valley. "You're under arrest for murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Come out with your hands up." Silence. Then a single shot rang out from the main building. Wright dove for cover. His men opened fire. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, half of Mercer's remaining men were dead or captured. The rest had fled into the hills. But Mercer himself was nowhere to be found. They searched the camp from top to bottom. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. "He's got to be here somewhere," Jacob said. "There's no other way out. Maybe he ran before we got here." "No, his horse is still in the stable. His money's still in the safe." Jacob looked around, his mind racing. "He's here. He's hiding." Then he heard it. A faint sound coming from beneath the floorboards. A cellar, hidden beneath the main building. "Right, over here." They found the trapdoor beneath a heavy rug. Jacob pulled it open, gun raised. Mercer stood at the bottom of the ladder, a derringer pressed to a young woman's head. His hostage, his leverage. "One more step, and she dies." Jacob froze. "Let her go, Mercer. It's over." "It's not over until I say it's over." Mercer's eyes were wild, desperate. "I built an empire. I changed this territory. And you think you can take it all away, you and that widow and her worthless documents. The documents are already published. The whole country knows what you did." "Then I have nothing left to lose." He cocked the derringer. "Do I?" Jacob's finger tightened on the trigger. One shot. He could end this right now. But the woman, the innocent woman who had nothing to do with any of this. "Let her go," Jacob said again, "and I'll let you walk out of here." "You expect me to believe that? I expect you to see reason. You're cornered, outnumbered. Even if you kill her, you die next." Jacob kept his voice steady. "Is that really how you want this to end?" Mercer's hand trembled. The Derringer wavered. Then slowly he lowered the gun. "Take him," Wright said. The deputies swarmed down the ladder. Mercer didn't resist as they bound his hands, but as they led him past Jacob, he stopped. "This isn't over, Mr. Hensley. You've made a powerful enemy today." "I've made powerful enemies before. I'm still standing." Mercer smiled, a cold, empty smile. For now. They loaded him into a wagon and rode back to Cheyenne. The trial would come later, the justice that Daniel Whitmore had been denied. But for now, it was enough. For now, it was over. Jacob rode straight to the doctor's office. Clara was sitting up when he walked in. Tommy curled against her side. "Jacob!" Tommy jumped up and ran to him. "Did you catch the bad man?" "We caught him." Jacob knelt down and hugged the boy. "He's going to prison for a long, long time." "Good." Tommy's voice was fierce. "He deserved it." "Yeah, son, he did." Clara watched them, her eyes bright with tears. "It's really over." Jacob crossed to her bedside. "It's really over. Mercer's in custody. The railroad's finished. The documents are public record now. Nobody can bury what happened. And Daniel. Everyone knows the truth. Your husband was murdered for refusing to sell his land. The whole country knows it." Clara closed her eyes. For a moment she was silent. Then she laughed. A broken, relieved sound that was half sob. 18 months, she whispered. 18 months of running. And it's finally over. Jacob took her hand. "What do you want to do now?" "Now." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Now I want to go home." "Missouri." "No." She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "The Hargrove place. Our place. The warm house. It's half burned. The porch is gone. The roof needs work. Then we'll fix it. Together." She squeezed his hand. "If you'll stay." Jacob looked at her. At this woman who had survived everything the world had thrown at her, who had fought and bled and refused to break. "I'll stay," he said, "for as long as you'll have me." "That could be forever." "I'm counting on it." Tommy climbed onto the bed and wedged himself between them. "Does this mean Mr. Jacob is going to be my new papa?" Clara looked at Jacob. Jacob looked at Clara. "Would you want that?" Jacob asked softly. Tommy nodded. "Papa told me once that family ain't just blood. It's the people who show up when things get hard." He looked up at Jacob with Daniel's eyes. "You showed up." Jacob felt something crack open in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away since Sarah and Emma died. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. "I showed up." "Then you're family." It was that simple. That pure. The way only a child could make it. Jacob pulled them both close, Clara and Tommy, and held on like he'd never let go. Because he wouldn't. Not ever again. Outside the snow was falling, soft and white and clean, like a new beginning, like a promise kept. They returned to the Hargrove place on a cold February morning. Clara leaned against Jacob's shoulder as they rode up the familiar hill. Her wound still healing, but her spirit stronger than it had been in years. Tommy sat in front of her, pointing at everything he recognized. "Look, Mama. They fixed the barn." It was true. While they'd been in Cheyenne, the men of Stillwater Creek had been busy. The barn stood straight and solid. New boards covered the burned sections of the house. Smoke curled from the chimney, welcoming them home. Ezra Pike waited on the porch, grinning through his gray beard. About time you showed up. We was starting to think you'd gone soft on us. Not a chance. Clara let Jacob help her down from the horse, wincing only slightly. What's all this? The boys wanted to help. Figured the least we could do after everything you done. Ezra tipped his hat. Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore. Home. The word settled into Clara's chest like a warm stone. Thank you, Ezra. Thank you all. They walked inside together, and Clara stopped in the doorway. The house had been transformed. New curtains hung in the windows. The floor had been scrubbed clean. A fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with warmth and light. And there above the fireplace was a new sign, hand-carved in pine. The Warm House, 1879. Clara felt tears burn her eyes. Who did this? Tommy? Jacob put his hand on the boy's shoulder. He's been working on it for weeks. Wanted to surprise you. Tommy looked up at her uncertain. Do you like it, Mama? Clara knelt down and pulled him into her arms. I love it, baby. It's perfect. I put the year because that's when we found it. When everything changed. He pulled back, his face serious. Mr. Jacob helped me spell it right. Did he now? Clara looked up at Jacob, her heart full. Boy's a natural craftsman. Jacob's voice was gruff, but his eyes were soft. Reminds me of his pa. Tommy beamed. It was the highest compliment anyone could give him. The days that followed were busy with healing and rebuilding. Clara's shoulder mended slowly but steadily. The house grew stronger piece by piece as neighbors came and went, each leaving something behind. A rocking chair from the Hendersons. Preserves from the widow Morrison. Seeds for spring planting from a family Clara had never met who'd heard about her stand against Mercer and wanted to help. I don't understand, she said one evening, watching yet another wagon disappear down the road. These people don't even know me. They know what you did. Jacob sat beside her on the new porch, their shoulders touching. Word travels fast out here. You're famous Clara Whitmore. I didn't do it for fame. I know. That's why they respect you. He took her hand. You fought for something bigger than yourself. People remember that. Clara leaned into him. I couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could. You were doing just fine before I came along. I was surviving. That's not the same as living. Jacob was quiet for a moment. No, it ain't. The trial came in March. Clara traveled to Cheyenne to testify, Jacob and Tommy at her side. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters, and railroad executives who'd come to watch their empire fall. Clayton Mercer sat at the defendant's table, his silver hair now lank and gray, his expensive suit wrinkled. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When Clara took the stand, he stared at her with those cold eyes. But she didn't look away. Mrs. Whitmore, the prosecutor said, can you describe the events of October 15, 1877, the night your husband was killed? Clara took a breath. She'd been dreading this moment for 18 months. But now that it was here, she felt only calm. My husband Daniel refused to sell our land to the Mercer Railroad Company. 3 times Mr. Mercer came to our farm. 3 times Daniel said no. She kept her voice steady. The 4th time Mr. Mercer didn't come himself. He sent men with guns. Objection. Mercer's lawyer jumped to his feet. The witness cannot possibly know who sent these alleged men. I know because I saw them. Clara's voice cut through the courtroom. I saw them right away after they shot my husband in the back, and I recognized the brand on their horses, the same brand I saw on Mr. Mercer's wagon when he came to offer his condolences the next day. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Did you report this to the authorities? I tried. The sheriff told me I was mistaken. He told me it was a robbery gone wrong. He told me to accept Mr. Mercer's generous offer for the land and move on with my life. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. I found out later that the sheriff was on Mr. Mercer's payroll. More murmurs. Mercer's face went pale. And what did you do then? I ran. I took my son and I ran because I knew if I stayed I'd be next. For 18 months, Mr. Mercer's men hunted us across 3 territories. They burned our shelters. They threatened anyone who helped us. They tried to kill us more times than I can count. Yet here you are. Here I am. Clara lifted her chin. Because I made a promise to my husband. I promised him I would survive. I would protect our son. And I would make sure the truth came out no matter what it cost me. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. No further questions. Mercer's lawyer approached for cross-examination, but Clara wasn't afraid. She answered every question calmly, honestly, without wavering. When she stepped down from the stand, Tommy ran to her and threw his arms around her waist. You did so good, Mama. I just told the truth, baby. That's what made it good. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty, on all counts. Clayton Mercer was sentenced to hang. Clara watched them lead him away, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. He'd thought his money could protect him, his power, his connections. He'd thought wrong. How do you feel? Jacob asked as they left the courthouse. Clara considered the question. For 18 months, she'd dreamed of this moment. She'd thought it would feel triumphant, satisfying. Instead, she just felt tired. I feel like it's time to go home. Jacob put his arm around her. Then let's go home. Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, revealing green shoots pushing up through the dark earth. The creek ran high and clear. Birds returned to the valley, filling the air with song. And the warm house bloomed to life. Clara planted a garden behind the kitchen, rows of vegetables and herbs that would feed them through the next winter. Tommy helped Jacob repair the fence line, learning to swing a hammer with the same determination he brought to everything. The men of Stillwater Creek came and went, always finding some excuse to stop by. Ezra Pike became a regular presence, teaching Tommy to fish in the creek and telling stories about his days as a soldier. One afternoon, a carriage appeared on the road. Clara shaded her eyes against the sun, trying to make out the occupants. A woman stepped out, elderly, dressed in black, with white hair pinned beneath a modest bonnet. "May I help you?" Clara called. The woman walked slowly toward the house, her cane tapping against the packed earth. When she reached the porch, she stopped and looked up with eyes that held decades of sorrow. "This was my family's home," she said quietly. "I grew up here, before the war, before everything changed." Clara's heart stuttered. "You're a Hargrove." "I was. Martha Hargrove before I married." The woman touched the porch railing, her fingers tracing the grain of the wood. "My father built this house for my mother. They said it would stand forever. It very nearly didn't." Clara came down the steps. "When I found it, it was abandoned, falling apart. I know. I've been following the newspaper stories. About you. About what you did." Martha looked at her with something like wonder. "You saved it." "I just needed a place to survive." "And you turned it into something more." Martha smiled and tears glistened in her eyes. "My mother always said this house had a soul, that it was waiting for someone to love it again." She reached out and took Clara's hand. "I'm glad it found you." Clara didn't know what to say. She thought of Benjamin Hargrove's letters, still tucked in that wooden box in the bedroom. She thought of the love he'd poured into every beam, every stone, every carefully fitted joint. "Would you like to come inside?" she finally asked. "I could make tea, show you what we've done." Martha's face lit up. "I'd like that very much." They sat together in the kitchen, two women separated by generations, but connected by the same four walls. Martha told stories about her childhood, about her parents, about the day she left and never came back. "I always meant to return," she said. "But life had other plans. My husband's work took us east. Then the children came. Then grandchildren." She sighed. "Before I knew it, 40 years had passed. Why did you come back now?" "Because I read about you in the Tribune, about what you suffered, what you overcame." Martha set down her teacup. "And I realized I'd been a coward. I'd let this place die because I was too afraid of the memories." "You're not a coward. You survived. Survival isn't enough." Martha looked at her with Daniel's eyes, with Tommy's eyes, with the eyes of every person who'd ever lost something precious. "You taught me that, Mrs. Whitmore. You taught this whole territory that." Clara felt the weight of those words settle into her bones. Before Martha left, she pressed something into Clara's hand. A piece of paper yellowed and fragile. "What is this?" "The deed. The original deed to this land, signed by my father." Martha closed Clara's fingers around it. "It belongs here now, with you. I can't accept this." "You already have. The moment you lit that fire and refused to let this house die, you accepted it." Martha kissed her cheek. "Take care of my home, Clara Whitmore. It chose well." She climbed back into her carriage and rode away. Clara stood on the porch until the dust settled the deed clutched to her chest. "What was that about?" Jacob appeared beside her. "A gift." Clara showed him the paper. "We own this land now, legally, forever." Jacob stared at the deed, then at her. "That's... Clara, that's incredible. It feels like a dream." "It ain't a dream." He pulled her close. "It's just your life. The life you earned. The life you deserve." She leaned into him, breathing in his scent, leather and wood smoke, and something that was simply Jacob. "Our life," she corrected softly. He tilted her chin up. "Yeah, our life." He kissed her, and Clara felt the last of her walls crumble. The walls she'd built to protect herself after Daniel died. The walls that had kept her safe, but also kept her alone. She didn't need them anymore. A month later, Reverend Ford came to the Warm House. He'd been making his circuit through the territory, bringing the word to settlements too small for their own church. When he heard about the woman who'd brought down Clayton Mercer, he made a special detour. "I understand there's to be a wedding," he said, his eyes twinkling beneath bushy brows. Clara blushed. "We haven't set a date." "Then, might I suggest today?" The Reverend spread his hands. "The sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, and I've got nowhere else to be." Clara looked at Jacob. Jacob looked at Clara. "Today," she whispered. "Why not today?" He took her hands. "We've waited long enough, don't you think?" She thought about all the reasons to wait. Proper planning, a proper dress, proper invitations. Then she thought about 18 months of running, of fighting, of nearly dying a dozen times over. Life was short, life was uncertain, and she was done wasting it. "Today," she said. "Let's do it today." Word spread fast. By afternoon, half of Stillwater Creek had gathered at the Warm House. Ezra Pike stood as Jacob's witness. The widow Morrison helped Clara pin wildflowers in her hair. Tommy walked his mother down the aisle, his chin high, his eyes bright with pride. "You look beautiful, Mama." "Thank you, baby. Papa would be happy. I know he would." Clara's throat tightened. "I think so too." They reached Jacob, who stood waiting beneath an arch of spring blossoms. He wore his best shirt, his hair combed back, his face shaved clean for the first time since she'd known him. He looked terrified. "Having second thoughts," she whispered. "Only about whether I deserve you." "You do. I promise you do." Reverend Ford cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The ceremony was simple. The vows were traditional. But when Jacob slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, a ring he'd made himself from a piece of copper found on the land, something shifted in the air. Something settled into place. "I now pronounce you man and wife." The Reverend beamed. "You may kiss the bride." Jacob pulled her close. "I love you, Clara Hensley." "I love you too." She smiled against his lips. "But I'm keeping Whitmore. For Daniel." "I wouldn't have it any other way." They kissed, and the crowd cheered, and Tommy threw himself between them, hugging them both at once. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" "We've been a real family for a while, son." Jacob ruffled his hair. "This just makes it official." "Good." Tommy grinned. "Because I already told everyone at school that you're my pa." Clara laughed. A real laugh, full and free, and without a trace of shadow. She'd almost forgotten what that felt like. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was music and dancing and more food than Clara had seen in years. People she'd never met came to shake her hand, to thank her, to welcome her into the community. By the time the last guest left, Clara was exhausted but happier than she'd been in as long as she could remember. She stood on the porch watching the stars appear one by one. Jacob came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing." She leaned back against him. "I keep waiting to wake up." "This is real, Clara. All of it." "I know. That's what scares me." She turned in his arms. "I've lost so much. My husband, my home, my whole life. What if I lose this too?" "You won't." "You can't promise that." "No." Jacob's voice was steady. "But I can promise that whatever comes, we'll face it together. You and me and Tommy. A family." A family. Clara tested the word. It felt right. It felt like coming home. "I spent 4 years alone after Sarah and Emma died," Jacob continued. 4 years of thinking I didn't deserve happiness, that it was my punishment for not saving them. He touched her face. "Then I found you standing in the snow with a gun in your hand and fire in your eyes. And I realized something." "What?" "That they wouldn't want me to be alone forever. That they'd want me to love again, to live again." His voice broke slightly. "You gave me that, Clara. You gave me back my life." She reached up and touched his cheek. "We saved each other." "Yeah." He smiled, and the years fell away from his face. "I reckon we did." That night, after Tommy was asleep and the house was quiet, Clara sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. She'd been putting this off for months, but now, finally, she was ready. "Dear Daniel," she wrote, "I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if there's anything after this life, or if we just disappear into the dark. But I wanted to tell you something just in case." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I kept my promise. I survived. I protected our son. I made sure the truth came out." The pen trembled in her hand. "But more than that, I found something I never expected to find again. I found a home. I found a family. I found love." Tears dripped onto the paper, smudging the ink. "His name is Jacob. He's a good man. A kind man. He treats Tommy like his own son, and he looks at me like I'm something precious. I think you would have liked him, Daniel. I think you would have been glad." She wiped her eyes and kept writing. "I'll never forget you, not a single day of my life. You were my first love, the father of my child, the man who taught me what courage looks like. That will never change." She smiled through her tears. "But I've learned something these past months, something important. Love doesn't run out. It doesn't diminish because you share it with someone new. It just grows. It expands. It fills all the empty spaces you thought would stay empty forever. So I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying thank you. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for Tommy. Thank you for the years we had together. And thank you for letting me go." She signed the letter and folded it carefully. Tomorrow she would bury it at the base of the old oak tree behind the house. A memorial. A farewell. But tonight she had one more thing to do. She walked to the bedroom where Jacob waited. He looked up when she entered, his face soft in the lamplight. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." She crossed to the bed and sat beside him. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" Clara took a breath. She hadn't been sure until this moment, but now, holding his hand, looking into his eyes, she knew. "I'm pregnant." Jacob went very still. "You're... what?" "Pregnant. With child. Going to have a baby." She laughed at his expression. "Isn't that what married people do?" "Clara." He seemed to struggle for words. Are you sure? The doctor confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you. She searched his face. Is this okay? For a moment he just stared at her. Then his face cracked into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. Okay. He pulled her into his arms. Clara, this is the best news I've ever heard. Really? Really? He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. A baby. Our baby. I was worried you might... She trailed off. Might what? Think it was too soon. After Sarah. After Emma. Jacob pulled back his hands, cradling her face. Sarah and Emma will always be part of me, but they're not my whole story. Not anymore. He kissed her again, soft and sweet. You are. You and Tommy and this baby. You're my story now. Clara felt something release in her chest. The last knot of fear. The last whisper of doubt. I love you, Jacob Hensley. I love you too, Clara. He rested his hand on her stomach. Both of you. They fell asleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretching out before them like an endless horizon. The baby came in January on the coldest night of the year. They named her Emma. Emma Clara Hensley. Tommy held his baby sister for the first time, his face full of wonder. She's so small, Mama. You were that small once. No way. Way. Clara smiled. And now look at you. Almost as tall as your pa. Tommy glowed at the word. Pa. He'd been using it for months now, but it still made him light up every time. Jacob stood by the window watching the snow fall. Clara knew what he was thinking. Knew whose face he was seeing in the white curtain outside. Come meet your daughter, she said softly. He turned, and she saw tears on his cheeks. The first tears she'd ever seen him cry. She looks like Emma, he whispered. My Emma. I know. Is that why you chose the name? Partly. Clara reached for his hand. But mostly because Emma means whole, complete. And that's what you've made me. What you've made us. Jacob took the baby from Tommy's arms. Emma cooed, her tiny fingers wrapping around his thumb. Hello, little one, he murmured. I'm your papa, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how loved you are. Clara watched them, her heart so full it ached. This man who had lost everything. This baby who represented everything he'd been given back. This family they had built together from the ashes of grief and the embers of hope. Outside, the snow kept falling. The warm house stood solid against the wind, its chimney smoking, its windows glowing with light. And inside, surrounded by love, Clara Whitmore Hensley finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place. Not four walls and a roof. Home was the people who showed up when things got hard. The people who stayed when it would have been easier to leave. The people who loved you, not despite your scars, but because of them. Home was Tommy growing into a young man who carried his father's courage and his mother's strength. Home was Emma sleeping peacefully in her father's arms, dreaming dreams of a future she would never have to fear. Home was Jacob, who had walked into her life when she needed him most and never walked away. Years later, travelers passing through the Wyoming Territory would tell stories about a house on a hill. A house that had stood empty for almost a decade, frozen and forgotten, until a widow and her son stumbled through its door during a blizzard. They said the house came alive that night, that it breathed again, that it found what it had been waiting for all along. Some said it was luck. Some said it was fate. Some said it was nothing but a fairy tale told to comfort children on cold nights. But Clara knew the truth. It wasn't luck or fate or fairy tales. It was love. Simple, stubborn, unbreakable love. The kind that survives the darkest winters. The kind that turns frozen houses into homes. The kind that lasts forever. and on quiet nights when the snow fell soft and the fire burned low, Clara would stand on the porch of the warm house her family gathered around her, and she would whisper a single word into the wind. Home. The house heard her, and it answered back. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of love, courage, and redemption from the American frontier. Drop a comment below and tell us your city. We want to know how far Clara's story has traveled. And if this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that second chances are always possible. Until next time, stay warm.